Hello everyone, this is going to be a quick tutorial on how to set up UPnP on an OPNSense firewall router. The reason why I'm making this video is there's some tutorials out there, but they don't have the proper information on how to set this feature up. UPnP is universal plug and play. That allows you to have any sort of video game services on Xboxes, PlayStations, or any other game consoles to work online without doing any port forwarding. For instance, here you can see on my screen I have GTA 5, and it automatically has a port set up for that. Again, none of the tutorials online actually cover this properly, so I'm going to run you through really quick how you go about doing that. The first thing you want to do is to actually get the Universal Plug and Play software installed. This isn't in OPNSense by default. So the way you install that is you go to System, and then from within there you go to Firmware. And inside of there, you're going to go ahead and go to Updates. This is going to force your package manager to grab the latest updates to all packages. If you have any updates available, you should update before you proceed with this, just because certain things will complain or just not run properly unless all the packages are up to date. Updates take about 5 minutes. In my case, it's a matter of do as I say, not as I do, because I'm already going to just ignore that for right now. You will run into issues though. I already have it installed. That's why I'm just going to save the time right now and not go through that. Once you're done checking for updates, it'll just say what's available. Go ahead and go to actually run those updates from the home page. If you don't know how to do that, this isn't the right tutorial. To actually install UPnP, there's two plugins that you need. The first one is the OS-UPnP, which is right here. So you'll have that one. But then there's another one called Mini UPnP. It doesn't show up after you actually have it installed in the plugins. It'll show up in your packages. So these are the two plugins that you need to have installed here. You have to have both. One does the back end of the actual software side of things, and then the OS UPnP actually allows you to have the ability to click on things and just set them up within the UI. Once you've got both packages installed, and in case you don't know how to install a package, it's just a little plus icon to the side here. You'll click install, it'll run you through the whole process, and then you'll be good to go. Also, I believe, don't quote me on this, but it might be when you install OS UPnP, it also installs the Mini UPnP. That might be why they don't show up separately. It's been a while since I've actually installed it, but either way, this is working on the latest version of OPNSense within a couple weeks of when I did the most recent update. And I will be updating after this, so if for some reason in the latest update there was problems, I would definitely post in the description about that, or I can just go in and edit that into the video as well. So once that's installed, I would recommend rebooting if you don't already have to. I can't remember if that's one of the things, just to make sure everything's completely applied. Then once you've done that, completely unrelated to the UPnP program, you're going to go down to Firewall, and then go to NAT. UPnP allows you to make automatic NAT rules, which basically just allows the port forwarding to happen. If you were to manually do them, you would do them in port forward, and then you'd go ahead and be able to do all of that. Enjoy all of my millions of port forwarding rules and private IP addresses on that, so unrelated to what you guys are doing, but still, that's if you didn't want to use UPnP, you could manually forward every port as well. The area you need to be in, though, before we set up any UPnP stuff is the firewall NAT outbound. So firewall NAT outbound. You're going to make a single rule. The rule in there is going to be on your WAN interface, and your WAN interface for the third option down. It's going to be set to TCP version IPv4, any protocol, and then your source address. In my case, it's called AccessNet. If you're not sure what your interface is called, it's really easy to figure out. Just go to Services, and then you'll go down to your DHCP v4. Eventually, this is actually going to be switching to a different DHCP. It'll be switching to Key DHCP. Right now, it's still ISC, but it's unrelated. You'll see your list of interfaces here. In my case, I know my IP address starts with 10.2.20, so going through my list of DHCP servers, I can go, oh, my interface is named Access. Cool. Now I confirmed that. The source address is the network that's going to actually have the automatic port forwarding happening. If it makes you ask it, you will need to set the translation target as your WAN address, and really everything else stays default. There is one thing though, and this is where all the tutorials have this wrong. This undescriptive option right here called static port. This works great if you're only going to have a single Xbox, a single PlayStation, whatever in your house. If you have this option clicked and you have multiple people playing GTA, let's say you have some friends over and you all want to play online together, it just won't work. Because what happens is when you're inside of the UPnP process, this will say, all right, we're going to use port 80 for GTA. That's obviously not the port for it, but use it for the example. You'll go through that, and it will mandate every time that your public port needs to be port 80. So you'll have multiple ports all doing the same thing. To not nerd out on that, things just literally won't work. You'll have one Xbox that works, the rest don't. Don't check that box. Give it a good description so you know what this does. As you can see, I've had this rule for a really long time, and it just kind of works. Make sure you save it. After you've saved it, it's going to make you apply it. Again, make sure you do that as well. What's important though is this is where you need to confirm everything lines up with what I have here. Your interface is going to be WAN, your source needs to be AccessNet, source part is a star, destination is a star, destination port is a star, NAT address is your WAN address, NAT port star, and static port no. Very important that you have these correct, and it's also important that you have this set to hybrid up here. If you don't have this set to hybrid, check hybrid, hit save, hit apply on that as well. Those are all steps that people completely overlook when they're going through this process. Once you've done that, then there's some firewall rules that you have to do to actually make NAT work. Because OPNSense is a firewall, they make sure that everything is to the top tier on security, and you have to do everything by hand the first time around. So we're going to go into our firewall rules. Since we're already in the NAT, it's just a couple down here. And again, we're going to be working with our access interface. Again, we already confirmed that's the interface where we want the automatic port forwarding to happen. There's multiple rules that you need to actually make this happen. 2 UDP rules, 1 TCP rule. That doesn't mean anything for, you don't need to understand the difference between them, but the first one, you're going to, of course, make sure the action is pass, the interface is access, direction is in, IPv4, and protocol UDP. You do need to specifically set this one to UDP. You'll set the source to AccessNet, and then under destination, you're going to have to check that and hit single host or network, and you'll need to set it to this multicast address. If you want to look up what multicast does, be my guest. I'm not going to explain that to you here. I am a CCNA routing and switching holder, so I know all of this stuff, and I figured this out the hard way. Your destination port range needs to be 1900 to 1900. Make sure this is given a description. Personally, I set it to allow UPnP multicast traffic. And that's really it. As you can see, I haven't modified this rule in about 3 years here, so it's just kind of worked. I'm going to cancel out of that because I already know I have it set up properly in case I typoed anything weird or bumped a space in. So there's our first UPnP rule. Next, we're going to make another rule, and again, making the rules is this orange button up here. It's the exact same view other than when you click into it, it's going to be completely blank, like for what's set to what. So let me just back up real quick here. Rule number 2. You're going to click the orange button, and then you want to make the steps look like it does for me here. The action needs to be set to pass, interface access, IP version IPv4, protocol UDP, same as the last one. Your destination port range is different on this one though. It's got to be set to 5351 to 5351. And that is our second UPnP rule. Don't need to modify anything else in this. As simple as that. So once you've made those 2 rules, again, you should be able to line them up with what I'm doing here. Your source won't be called AccessNet, it'll be called whatever your individual source is. Port is the star, you've got your destination, port number, and your description. On to our second rule, IPv4 UDP, star, 5351, 2 more stars, and then the description. Make sure these line up with how I'm showing it. Again, your source is going to look different depending on what you have your LAN interface called. The last rule you have to create is a TCP rule. So again, you'll hit the orange button on that, and it'll pop you in. Make sure the action is pass, interface is access, direction is in, IPv4. This one needs to be set to TCP. The other two are UDP. Again, the source is the access net. I imagine that's already populated, but if it's not, just make sure it lines up. The destination port range is 2189 to 2189. And then go ahead and give that a description as well so that you know what this does. Again, once you hit save on that, you're going to just go ahead and make sure these three rules line up with what I have. And actually, I'm going to just change the name of this real quick to allow UPnP 1, just so they line up nicer. You don't need to hit apply as you make every single rule. Just make sure that these all three line up perfectly with what I've got before you hit apply on that. Most importantly, make sure that the arrow is pointing inwards, because if I remember correctly. No, actually that's correct. So ignore that. Apologize I'm so long-winded in a lot of this. I just want to make sure that people actually understand why you're doing this stuff. So access net, destination, and all three here. These three need to be identical. Doesn't matter what order they come in unless you had some specific rules blocking this type of traffic. Once you've confirmed all three are correct, you're going to go ahead and hit apply changes. It'll take a second or two. Applied successfully. Cool. We're one step closer. Next up, we're actually going to go ahead and configure UPnP. To do that, you're going to go into the bottom left where it says services. Click into that. You're going to go to universal plug and play. And then we're going to go into settings. There's two types of UPnP out there. There's one for Microsoft. Actually, let me turn on the full help so every single explanation's on there. First off, you're going to want the enable power switch clicked on for that. And then you want UPnP IGD port mapping. This says for Microsoft compatible systems and Apple compatible systems. Most of the time, everything is compatible interchangeably these days, so I would just say focus on having Microsoft compatibility. If for some reason your UPnP didn't work, try swapping the two around. I just used the one. Everything works perfectly fine for me on my Xbox Series X and an Xbox One X and other devices as well. It works for me. Your mileage may vary, but yeah. I keep the second one in check just for the fun of it because it hasn't broken anything. Your external interface is going to be your WAN interface. You might have this labeled differently. It's whatever's connected outside of your network, not the network that's your Xbox or whatever's plugged into. Your interfaces, you can actually have multiple checked if you wanted to. Obviously, in my case, I only have one network that I actually want to be able to automatically port forward. So I just have that one checked. The rest you can really leave blank. Download speed, no one cares about that. Stun port, it says 3478 in it, but I don't actually have anything typed in there. If you want, you can log the packets, but everything else can kind of stay the way it is. If you're like paranoid about security, you can set up a default deny rule. If you're just some random guy that's not hosting servers, though, you really don't need to worry about it. Number of permissions you can leave blank. All right, now let's actually get into the user-specified permissions. You can ignore this. This is just because I have a server that I know I don't want to have UPnP running on that IP address. So that rule says 0 through that number. That's every port possible. It says do not allow that to self-port forward at all. So you can ignore this rule entirely. The rule that you're going to want to set up is this rule I have in entry 2. You'd throw it in entry 1, but it really doesn't matter as long as it's in there. So it's going to allow this port range. And oops, actually, I had a typo in there, guys. That was supposed to say .0. It doesn't really affect anything. It's just some addresses weren't able to port forward if they wanted to. So it's going to be allow the port range, your IP address subnet, and then the port range again. All this is whatever the IP address is of your computer, which you can get from your command prompt by going ipconfig. And you'll look for your default gateway. It should be .1. If it's .1, just change it to a .0. And then as long as this says 255s, 255, 255, 255.0, you can just do 10.2.20.0/24. Again, you'd be going in here, highlighting this part, copying it, going in here, and then putting a .0/24 on the end. It is important you do that, because if you don't, it's not going to work properly. This is just saying to use only this network though. Once you've done that, you're just going to go ahead and hit save. This one's actually a little different than your firewall. Normally you'd have to hit apply and it just, you have to double confirm it after saving it. It did that for you. So it already went through and saved and applied that. Now, in your case, since you just turned on UPnP with clicking enable, it might not be running. So it might actually be showing like this, where it's red and you have to hit the little play button. You'll click that once and everything will turn on. The easiest way to test if your UPnP is working properly is power up whatever device needs UPnP, completely power it up. It can't already be running. So if that's a computer, fully restart it. If that's an Xbox, fully restart it, etc. A lot of devices just kind of give up when you don't have it working and won't try again after that point. So that's the whole process to go about making it work. Again, make sure that every single step that I went through here is set up identically. And that should do it, guys. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments.